These boys, they went wild in the park.
None of the victims has identified the perpetrator in these crimes.
They committed the vicious attack. Imagine the frenzy of these teenagers ripping off her clothes.
There is not one drop on Antron's clothes.
If he say he ain't touched that woman, he ain't touched that woman.
So we can trust his words.
Yes, you can.
We have his words, saying that he did.
These tapes are not as clean as the state would have you believe.
They said if I went along with it, that I could go home. And that's all I wanted. That's all I still want.
You had nothing to do with it.
They admitted all of this.
There is not one shred of physical evidence.
They did nothing to stop her agony. They are guilty.
They are innocent of these crimes.
These boys, they went wild in the park.
None of the victims identified the perpetrator.
Happy Sunday, y'all, and good evening. Especially a special good evening to all our friends joining us via Zoom and through Facebook for now our fourth of 5 conversations regarding Miss Ava DuVernay's movie in 4 parts, When They See Us. Again, my name is Carlos Marino. I'm the co-executive director of Big Picture Learning, and I'll once again be your host and moderator for tonight's fabulous conversation. So when you see them, they may be laughing, talking loudly, listening to music that is not your music. They may be dressed in clothes that are not your clothes, speaking words that are not like yours. And when you see them, you may see them through glasses colored with your own experiences, your impatience and your frustration that they are not like you. And their perception, and that perception is what can rob them of their education, steal their freedom, or in worst cases, take their lives. At first, there was nothing special about that night, April 19th, 1989, when Raymond Santana Jr., Yusef Salaam, Corey Wise, Antron McCray, and Kevin Richardson tagged along with a group of kids who walked into Central Park. Some of them were good friends, some hardly knew each other or had only seen one another in passing at Schomburg's Plaza, where a lot of them lived, a mixed income apartment complex on 5th Avenue and 110th Street. Members of the larger group they joined later admitted to asking for money from passers-by in the park, as well as throwing rocks and hitting people. But none of them had any knowledge about the rape of Miss Trisha Miley, a female jogger whose body was found later that night, about half a mile southeast from where the teens had been. Over the next 2 days, each of the 5 were arrested as part of a police dragnet of Black and Latino youths who were held for as long as 27 hours while being subjected to questioning, in many cases without their parents. The 5 teens eventually spent 5 and 13 years in prison for a crime none of them even saw, let alone committed. It would be over a decade before the truth would align with the charges against the 5 boys. But what happened that April night and then the days that followed continue to shed light on the flaws in how criminal investigations are conducted and how due process is administered. Warped by racism and discrimination, these systems can be manipulated and used to destroy innocent people's lives. Need to give a hearty thank you to the many folks that joined us for last week's conversation, where we began to talk about the various components of the system, intentionally leaving the word justice out. And the parts of the system that we focused on last week were law enforcement and police, the courts and the judicial system, and parole and reentry. I am incredibly excited about tonight's conversation, and I'm honored to be in the company of 3 brilliant young leaders who will be engaging in a dialogue and sharing their thoughts around the events of this series. We'll hear how they, as young people and as representatives of all that is possible, experience this series and what they believe is necessary to address a lot of the injustices in this series and in education. So let me begin by introducing our incredible panelists. First, we have Ms. Sophia Irvin. Sophia is entering her first year of high school at the San Diego Met School. She is an aspiring filmmaker who is passionate about writing, cinematography, and telling her own stories. Sophia loves to play softball and spend time with her friends. We also have with us Mr. Ryan Rivera. As a graduate of El Centro de Estudiantes, Ryan has taken it upon himself to organize and educate scores of Philadelphia youth in the years since his graduation. After graduating from El Centro in 2016, Ryan has steadily climbed the professional ladder through hard work, guile, and an unbridled tenacity. Ryan serves as the personal assistant to Judge Rayford Means of the First Judicial District of Philadelphia. Ryan, who plans to one day formally join the ranks of law enforcement, also organizes forums that open dialogues between police officers and Philadelphia youth. And lastly, we have Mr. Nasim Hamid. Nasim is from the Bronx, New York, a rising junior at the George Washington University, majoring in political science, minoring in human services and social justice. Nasim currently works at the Multicultural Center and is Polemarch of the Kappa Chi chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. He is also vice president of the Black Men's Initiative on campus. Nasim is passionate about everything associated with his home, the Bronx. Nasim has experience working with elected officials, community-based organizations, and nonprofits in New York. Nas, as he likes to be called, has aspirations of attending law school and one day becoming an elected official, initiating positive change within his community. So it's fascinating to have these three young folks with such aligned interests and passions and trajectories given the series. We know the importance of media. We know the importance of cinematography. We know the importance of having high quality folks in law enforcement and the power of our elected officials who advocate on behalf of communities. So I'm really excited and thank you all for being with us for this conversation. For the folks who are returning or have been a part of these conversations, I'm gonna go over our format a little bit again. For those of you on Zoom, we ask and strongly encourage you to have a conversation with each other via the chat option in Zoom. Please use that Zoom chat. The richness of those conversations continue on, and there are powerful pieces that we can share also with our esteemed panelists. Talk about what you are hearing, what is resonating with you, what questions you have, and where you may feel you need support in your own work. You can also directly post questions to any of us via the Zoom chat, but do not use the chat, please. Use the Q&A option on your Zoom. That Q&A is being monitored by my colleague and accomplice for this series, Mr. Chris Jackson. And for our Facebook Live viewers, we encourage you to do the same, please, right? Please engage, use that chat, and share it with other folks who might be on Facebook. Feel free to tag others on into the conversation. Let them know that this is happening. Once again, I'd like to extend my deepest appreciation to all of you for your understanding and grace with technology. Though we've been powering through, we continue to get better at it. So we're excited to dive right in. All right. So I want to start off with our panelists, and maybe the first question I'd like to throw out to Sophia is, as a father who actually just recently sat down with my daughter to watch a couple of the episodes together, I'd love to hear from young folks, like what was it like to watch this documentary? Maybe if you don't mind telling us a little bit of the story of where you watched it, who was with you, and what was that like for you? You know, in some ways, did you sit with pop? Is this a series that you sat with some popcorn, or was it a group viewing? I'd love to start with it, Sophia, if you can help us paint that picture for us.
All right, well, I will say this was a series I dreaded watching from the minute I saw the trailer come out. I was scared to watch it. I told many people who were pushing me to go watch it, I said, I don't know if mentally I can handle something like that, because those boys were my age and I felt so close to them at the time watching it, because I felt what they were going through. The fear that they felt, I felt as well if I put myself in their shoes. And I understood how they felt. A few characters that really stuck with me were Raymond and Kevin. Raymond being younger than me at the time, and Kevin being around exactly my age. So seeing them really, it for sure, it hit me. So for sure, before going to watch the series itself, I sat down with my mom and I watched the documentary by Ken Burns to sort of give myself more context about what was happening and understand the story a bit more before sitting down to watch the whole series. So the first two I sat down, I watched by myself. For sure, it was a lot of pausing and resuming to sit down and reflect about what I was watching and what I was viewing, to sit back and think to myself, wow, that really just happened. So upon request, my mom requested that I hadn't watched the two alone. She asked that I had waited and I had viewed them with her, which I'm so thankful she had asked for. Now I had just finished the series. I would say that the last two were the ones where my fear really came to life, especially the last one, seeing what Corey had to go through. And also Jharrel Jerome, the actor who plays Corey, his depiction of him is just so raw and real that I felt his true fear of being thrown into a prison with grown men where he didn't belong. And I also felt like I connected to Corey more because the only reason he ended up in this whole situation is because he was trying to support his boy Yusuf. And I felt how he felt, because if I had seen one of my best friends put in that situation, without a doubt, I would go down to that police station, sit there with them and wait with them to make sure they were okay and that they would come out of that situation safe, because that's what friends do with each other. So for sure, I was scared to watch this series. It was a lot of fear for me, a lot of empathizing. I just felt what those boys felt, because in this situation, no matter how much teens don't want to admit it, we're still kids. As much as we don't want to say we're kids. We don't know. We swear we want to know everything when we really don't. It's scary. So to put myself in their shoes and see what they were seeing, it was a hard one to watch, to see kids my age go through something like that, for sure.
Totally. In sitting with my daughter Isabella, she's 14, going into 9th grade, like you are. And she just had so many questions for me around it. Especially, she realized that I grew up probably a couple of stones throws away from that community where there's these young brothers live. So I could totally understand. Ryan, Philadelphia, right? So I can imagine there are a lot of things that kind of resonated for you. But talk to us about your viewing of this, like kind of leading to it, and kind of your experience and how you process this, man.
So I seen the trailer for When They See Us about a month prior to it coming out, and I was excited about watching it, but I was unaware that it was a true story. I had no idea that this was that this really happened. I just seen the actors that were going to be part of this, and I liked a few of the actors, and I liked the trailer. I enjoyed it, so I kept on top of it to see when it was going to come out. And then as it came closer to it coming out, I kept on like my social media, and I kept, finding out more things. And then eventually, before it came out, I found out that it was a true story, and it really happened. And I looked up a little bit of what actually happened before watching it, and I wasn't ready for it either. I wasn't ready for it just based off of what I've read and what I looked up. It was horrible. It was horrible. And this is without even seeing anything. So it was Sunday. It was Sunday afternoon, early afternoon. It was probably like 12 o'clock. Me and my girlfriend sat down, and I was like, look, I want to watch something. It comes out today. Let's watch it. So we sat on the couch and we started watching. We was only supposed to watch 2 because we had things to do. It's Sunday. But we ended up watching the whole thing, like straight through. And thinking about it now, it's just, it still gets me emotional because, we cried together while we were watching it. We smiled, when the AC came on for Corey, we cried when he said he just wanted to go home. And it's just so much of it that was just like, it was an emotional roller coaster for both of us. And by the time we were done, it was nighttime. It was dark outside, and we just was like, yo, we just want to go to bed. I don't even want to see nothing else. I don't want to go on social media. I don't want to look nothing else up. I just want to go to bed. And even the days after that, it just stayed on my mind. And still to this day, I continue to look up like bits and pieces from the Netflix series to see, you know, how true was it? You know, like the guard Robertson who helped Corey Wise while he was doing his time. Like I tried to find out if that was real or not, or if Donald Trump really spent $85,000 for an ad. $85,000? That's ridiculous. So it's like all those little pieces I still to this day still look up. And you know what's crazy? And I end with this. If for the people that are watching, and for you guys, if you guys never seen it, it's actually on YouTube. Corey's confession is on YouTube from, you know, back in the day when he was confessing, and that just rips you apart. It's I can't even put words to it. It's really just sad.
It really is. No, down to the detail that Ava captured from that Pepsi Cola can. And it's really hard for anyone, I think, to watch that, Ryan, and feel like that and believe deeply that that wasn't a coerced confession. So I appreciate your commentary. I'll throw in before I go to Nasim. I am a habitual like binge watcher of series. I do. Like I'll go through no lie, I watched the entire first 5 seasons of Game of Thrones in 3 weeks type of thing, right? Because I wasn't following it, and it took me a week to get through the series. I needed time. I needed to process. I needed to talk about it. I needed some sort of outlet. So I have tons of respect for the folks that were able to power through the series. Nas, we're both from the Bronx, right? So I know that I want to hear your reflections, of course, and kind of like your process and kind of where you are, and that being in your, in our backyard. One of the things that I thought about often is the mention of Spofford in the series, which anyone in New York City knows that is the juvenile detention center. Growing up in New York, anytime you heard Spofford, that was a spot. It was synonymous with Rikers for young people, right? Like you didn't want to go to Spofford. So a lot of folks often thought about or think about, oh, they went to juvie versus going to Rikers. Clearly Rikers is at a whole other level, but Spofford and the stories that we heard growing up coming out of Spofford were nothing that was light or easy. So I wanted to make that distinction. And Nas, I'd love to hear from you around kind of like your journey with the series, at least at the onset.
So I actually, similar to Ryan, I actually didn't know that this was a true story because I had seen the trailer and I thought that it was just, a new series on Netflix, an abundance of series come out on Netflix just about every month, and you just go and start to binge watch them. So I didn't know what the story was about. I happened to be in Atlanta interning this summer, and I was so focused on my work that I didn't know that this series had come out. Actually, one of the gentlemen I had been shadowing at my internship, a white man, right, just started breaking down the entire series, episode by episode, while I was shadowing him that day at work. And he broke it down through the eyes of a white man, just to be honest. And I was like, wow. And he was so passionate, breaking down episode by episode. And he was talking about how it took place in New York and just how he felt that the criminal justice system was messed up. And as I heard him speak, and I realized how he understood it and how impactful, even though he was a white man and couldn't completely understand that experience, how impactful the documentary was for him, I was like, I gotta watch this. So I went back home and I binge watched it after work that day. And I decided that I wasn't gonna speak to him the next day about the documentary, right? I didn't want to speak about it. I was infuriated, I was angry, and as I listened to the comments of Ryan and Sophia, I had like a knot in my chest because like this stuff makes me emotional. As I watched the documentary from the first episode to the last episode, I was just angry because being from New York, I have experienced very similar things that these young people experience. Not to the degree that they have, very much so not as extreme as they did in the documentary, but we understand how corrupt the system is, that there's systematic oppression through law enforcement in all urban communities. So you get angry watching these things and you fear watching these things. And then when you hear other people that don't completely understand your experience watch these things and try to speak about them with you, it makes you even more angry. So I would just say I was very infuriated. I was by myself in a dormitory I was staying in Atlanta, Georgia. And I got to process it because I was alone. But I was very emotional watching the documentary, and I'll just leave it at that.
No, and totally understandable range of emotions that I feel like that you all described. I want to highlight something Sophia said earlier about the really powerful and well put together documentary by Ken and I believe Sarah Burns that came out maybe possibly 2012 or 2013. For those that have not watched it, it's a great compliment. It's very factual with live and reels with a number of the players. I think it's a worthwhile watch without question, and it's fascinating. I mean, at first I heard Ryan kind of share a little bit about how he didn't know it was a real story, and Anaj, you said the same thing. And I feel like there are a lot of folks out there that perhaps weren't aware of that. And some may say that this documentary was about something that happened before you were born in a different town, at least for most of us, than where you are now. Let's bring it back to 2019, right? And your neighborhood. In what ways does it resonate? And in what ways is this different? And Naz, I'd love to go with you and then maybe follow with Sophia and Ryan.
So I'll start this off with a story. When I was this was my sophomore year of high school. And there's this event that we do at Fannie Lou called the Peace Block Party, promoting anti-gang and gun violence. And I remember that day we were on BronxNet promoting the Peace Block Party because we were excited and we had done planning. And I remember going back home and an altercation had taken place with my dad outside. And I walked outside that day and I had my slacks on and a button down and I was going to do laundry that day. And there were cops in front of my house. And my dad had gotten arrested and I went to the precinct and I had got arrested as well. And they had accused me of saying that I was gonna get my dad's gun to shoot this guy because he got into an altercation with my dad, and everything was a lie. And I got put into a cell by myself, and the cop had told me, if you tell me that where the gun is in your house, I'll let you go into the cell with your dad. And if you don't, then you can stay here as long as possible. And I remember my aunt coming into the precinct and screaming and talking about how good of a student I was and what I was doing that day to promote anti-gang and gun violence because of how much I love my community. And after that, another police officer had come in and said, all right, I'm gonna let you off with a summons, saying that I assaulted the guy. And I left that night, and luckily, later on, my family had fought it and none of this was on my record. But I say that to say that these things are still taking place. These things are still happening within our communities. And if we aren't educated on how to defend ourselves, the Central Park 5 can happen again to another set of young people. So the most important thing is we have to take control of the narrative as well as educate young people within our communities on how they can protect themselves and do what Ryan is doing in Philly and create that relationship between law enforcement and young people. Because in many communities, that relationship does not exist. I never shook a police officer's hand in my community. I see police officers in my community back in the Bronx and I'm scared. My heart is on 100 because I don't know what they're trying to do to me. I don't know if I fit the description. And there's been many times that I've been stopped. Oh, could I see your ID? Oh, we stopped you because you fit the description. You could continue to go home.
Yeah.
And you know, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, it's good. Finish.
And I'll just say, for the person that says it's 2019, we live in a new era, Donald Trump is president. We don't. That's it. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Young brothers and young sisters, like, I wish I could tell y'all that as you get older, that shifts, right? So I've been on numerous, I've been stopped numerous times in my lovely kind of suburban, urban community of Montclair, New Jersey, just pulled over, right? Because I fit a description, or there was something, they were doing something random, but it's always like, there was a span I remember of like 3 weeks where I was stopped 4 times, right? And it took me actually going to the police station and just being like, I needed to talk to the chief, right? I'm like, I live here, I pay taxes, like, are y'all serious? And if that's happening to, a 40-year-old working professional, right? Like, that, can flip and be in different spaces in different ways. I wonder what's happening, what's the experiences for our young people. So I appreciate that, Nas. Sophia, would love to hear, let's take it to the West Coast. Would love to hear about kind of what you're experiencing in kind of your own community and what resonates for you now in this day in 2019.
Well, I would like to start off by saying, Nassim, I feel your fear. I feel you. I know where you're coming from. There have been, numerous times where I remember one day specifically, I had to rush to get to softball practice. We were a little late. School ran a little late. We had to go home, grab stuff. We were in a rush. So, I'm in the car with my mom and we're rushing to go get to the field because it's quite a bit of a drive. And I remember my mom and I talking about how school was that day, and I hear her gasp. And I turned to her and she says, I just sped by that cop. He might pull us over. So I instantly feel my heart drop and my hands start sweating and I feel myself start shaking a little. What if this man pulls us over? What if he starts thinking I'm suspicious? Should I start keeping my hands visible? What do I do? What do I do? So, it's sort of like instantly you have that, like you said, am I going to fit the description? Are they going to think everything's okay? What are they going to think? It's instantly just that fear kicks in. And, I would say, some people say that I'm sort of in a bubble and this stuff doesn't happen on the West Coast, but there's no bubble. This is happening everywhere. And I have been told multiple times, like, you're in California, stuff like that doesn't happen. Everything's all, happy, love, nothing, everything's good in the West Coast. It's no different. And I would say that a good bit of the detective or what was happening in the story was driven by race a little bit, and feeling how certain things like my race has impacted me throughout the years, and just sort of that fear that I have to carry myself a certain way to come out of a situation alive with a police officer. I have to talk to them a certain way to seem like I'm educated enough to know what I'm doing. And it's just that constant fear, I'd say, of just, if also, like, I've started riding the bus alone to get from point A to B. With my internships at school and everything, I've gotten a bus pass and I've been riding around, like getting from point A to point B to my internship to go home throughout the summer. It's been helping a lot. And there's always that constant fear of being alone, of, hey, come here for a second, let me talk to you. That fear of being alone and not having a parent there with me. And it's just, I for sure feel what Nassim's saying. I feel that fear of that one day, well, I can't drive yet, but that one day I'm going to get pulled over. And that one day I'm going to be asked, like, hey, I pulled you over for this. So just, yeah, a lot of fear.
Indeed. Thank you, Sophia. And Ryan, in so many ways, right? So I know that you represent all that is potentially good about law enforcement in the future. So I say that to you, that our excitement around you and your next endeavor is personal, right? I know you feel it. I know you feel it day in and day out in your beloved community and different communities that you touch in different ways. I'd love to hear from you on kind of how you're experiencing that in your own context, and then feel free to also comment on any of what you've heard from Nasim and Sophia as well. So I'll give you the floor, man.
So, I had a similar situation to Nasim. I wasn't always pro police. I wasn't always, for police, and I'm still not. I crossed the line. I'm for them, but then I'm for my people. So I go back and forth, because I know what's right and what's wrong. But let's take it back to 2010. I was 12 years old. I was in Grover Washington Junior Middle School here in Philadelphia. And it was the day before spring break. It was a Friday. And I was with 6 students plus myself. So it was like 7 of us. And one of the individuals I was with, we were all 12 and 13 years old. One of the individuals I was with did something in the school, not to anyone, but he did something illegal in the school. And I was with him, and 5 other students were also with him. But in the camera, it was just me and him next to each other while he was doing what he was doing. I had no participation in what he was doing. I was just standing next to him. So me being from where I'm from, I felt the sense of urgency that they're going to come for us for this, because I know how this school is, and I know what he just did was like wrong. But I didn't think, they were going to arrest us. So I went. I had on all blue Dickie suit. I went, and at the time in the camera, I had only a white T-shirt on. I had took the Dickie shirt off. So I went back to my locker and I put my Dickie shirt back on. And we were going to lunch. And as we were going to lunch, it was a school police officer, it was a principal, and it was a vice principal there. And they started handpicking kids who they thought fit the description, or they just thought would be there. So they grabbed all the kids that were there except for the kid who did the crime. I guess you would say it was a crime, but they didn't get the kid who did the crime because he never got in trouble. He never got in trouble. I don't even think they knew what he looked like. So they took me because I was a troublemaker. I ain't gonna lie. And we all went into a room, and they started to interview us and show us the camera footage of what the person did and how we were standing. And then they start to ask us, like, who's this, who's that, who's this, because they couldn't make out faces on their camera system. So we got in there at 10 in the morning. And only reason I remember is because I remember when I got to the district, it was like 1 p.m. in the afternoon. So from 10 to about 12:30, they were just interviewing us. And the reason why it was so short was because we were 12 and 13 years old. I broke immediately. I ain't gonna lie. So they asked me, who's the dude in the blue shirt or the white shirt? And I just stood up and I was like, look, I want to get it over with. It's me. I got the white shirt. And I unbuttoned my blue shirt and I showed them my white shirt. I was like, it's me. Leave me alone. It's me. And then the cops come in. And that was cops standing behind us. And they're like, yeah, y'all going to jail. Mind you, we don't have no parents there. We don't have an older sister there, someone of age from our family there. It's just us students, 5, 6 of us at the time, and police officers, school police, and a principal and a vice principal letting this happen. And then they say, okay, well, Ryan, you're going to jail because you the dude in the blue shirt next to the trash can. So who's the dude standing next to you? So me being 12 years old, I guess, you know, what I was thinking was that, you know, I'm not gonna go to jail by myself, you know, or juvenile placement by myself. So I told another kid it's not right, you know, I shouldn't have done it, but I was 12 years old. I ain't, you know, I just was like thinking about myself and thinking like I don't want to go down for this by myself, especially when I ain't do what he was doing. I was just standing next to him. But you know, conspiracy. So anyway, I told them who that kid was, and they went and got him, and they put us in handcuffs and paraded us around the school to go get our book bags and our hoodies from our lockers, because our lockers were in our homeroom classes. So they took us from the first floor all the way to the third floor and walked us all the way around the building. The building was like a circle. So we started at one point, went up and walked all the way around, just like, you know, parading us by classrooms. Students were running to the door to see what happened. And then they had the police cars in the front. They took us to the station and the district, and they started to interview us further, you know, ask us where we lived, who our parents were. Mind you, our parents were not there, never came, you know, and all me and the other individual knew was that you will probably get out at 10 o'clock tonight. But the severity of the crime, we didn't get out at 10 o'clock that night. We ended up having to go to a juvenile placement or juvenile holding facility, and then we went to a placement. And that was a long little process. But the reason it resonated with me was because, you know, these kids at the time were also interviewed and interrogated and beat for, you know, not wanting to lie. You know, they wanted to tell their truth, but their truth wasn't good enough. So that part really touched home for me, because, you know, even though I didn't go through what they went through, I felt similar to the situation.
Appreciate that, Ryan. I want to point out that your comments, for all three of you, are setting the chat on fire, and it's definitely striking a nerve with a lot of our viewers, which we appreciating the chat. There are two specifically that I want to be able to point out so that y'all can, because I know y'all not monitoring it, and Chris and I kind of are, because that also helps feed some of the questions and how I position them, just full transparency. So our friend Nina Mancina said that clearly we need to use what happened to the Central Park Five to start these discussions in our schools, both to educate young people, but also to let adults know that this still happens in 2019, and yes, in California. And then our good friend Jessica Brown talks about how much she appreciates y'all naming fear and what physically happens in your body when you encounter police. And this is a healthy wellness crisis as well. And that definitely, I know that there a fear of, especially in this day and time, and nothing has changed from '89 or previous to that, is that anytime we encounter law enforcement, sadly, what happens and kind of what our reactions are. So just needed to name those and highlight those. So just realizing and just really knowing that there are many pitfalls and injustices as you move about your world as young people. And yet, I think for a lot of folks that are watching, we feel and see that you're each thriving and doing just powerful things, and just have this incredible knowledge of self that I'll speak personally that I know I did not have when I was your age. I know that a lot of our viewers and educators and those that will be able to see this after this is posted would want to know, is just like, could y'all tell us? And actually, like Nas, I'm gonna go to you first on this one. Can you tell us what it takes to be well in this environment? What do you do that helps, and who and what helps you, and kind of like how you move through this space of, you know, not just adulting now for you, but even thinking back to your days at Fannie Lou as well. So would love to hear from you.
I think number one is remaining true to myself, who I am. I'm a Black and Puerto Rican kid from the Bronx. Like, I'm proud to say it. I represent it from my shoes to my shirt to the way I speak and articulate my thoughts. But I think it takes a lot to get to that point, to be confident in your own skin. And I think my experiences in high school have built me up to when I came to GW and I was a college student facing microaggressions within the classroom, to be able to say, yeah, I deserve to be here because I worked hard to get here and I deserve a spot in this classroom and I deserve a seat at the table just like everyone else. And it starts with a strong support system. Like Carlos, you're one of my mentors. Chris Jackson is another one. I got a big support system at Fannie Lou, and just a strong family, a strong upbringing that has allowed me to step into a room with sort of confidence when I'm in a room with people who don't believe in me. I believe in myself, and I know that I have, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, people who have set the platform for me to excel. So I think that's number one.
All right, Sophia, I'd love to have you follow up on Nas. So how is it that Miss Sophia Irving is this incredibly thoughtful, impassioned, and just like has this incredible knowledge of self? Like, what's some of that secret sauce? How does that happen?
Well, for sure, adding on to Nas, feeling comfortable with yourself. I have a Colombian mother, Black father, so Afro-Latino all the way, and just getting comfortable with yourself. I'm not gonna lie, it's taken me a while to get comfortable in my own skin and feeling comfortable with being a proud Black woman. It's little steps for sure. I remember when I was little, I went to a predominantly white elementary school all the way through 7th grade. And I just remember in kindergarten feeling like the odd one out a little bit and asking my mom, like, why am I the only Black kid in my class? Why are there only like 2 other kids like me? Why do the kids ask why my hair looks like this? And for sure, just over time, realizing how beautiful and wonderful it is to be Black, and how just, like how it's so beautiful in its own separate way, like so many other cultures, and also surrounding myself with people who are just like me and celebrating each other in being who we are. And for sure, like just building up that community that's going to help you out. Also, just staying involved with the media for sure helps me like stay on my toes and know what's going on. I had an 8th grade US history teacher who was amazing in telling us, guys, know what's going on, watch the news, you're not too young for this, it's good to know what's happening. So for sure, I watch the news with my mom in the morning. I have a news app that keeps me updated. I just like knowing what's happening for sure. And also just any opportunity I can see, I charge it, because I know for me to make it in a world like this, I gotta be 2 times smarter than the people I'm competing against. So for sure, just opportunities that I see, taking them and just loving yourself, like knowing that everybody comes in different shapes, sizes, colors, and that's totally okay. And like kids my age, for sure, it takes a little bit to understand, like, you're different, and that's a totally okay thing. You don't need to wear the same clothes as everybody else. You don't need to listen to the same music. You don't need to eat the same food, celebrate the same holidays, because it's all beautiful in its separate way. So for sure, I'd just say, like, to succeed and do you got to accept you.
You have to accept you. I couldn't even add to that, Sophia. Thank you. And I want to elevate a comment from the principal of our incredible school in Nashville, Ms. Brenda Diaz, who, as you were speaking, wrote, "Self-love and valuing self is the greatest lesson we can give our students. Make sure you rep your identity." So to the hundreds of folks watching and that are touching the lives of young people, please keep that in mind in your interactions. And if you are an educator and are working and engaging with young people day in and day out, what you can do, creating the spaces where that can happen, and allowing the opportunity and the honest conversations around what students are worth, and knowing that they are loved, and they're valued is critical in that journey. So Ryan, turn it over to you. Yes, go ahead, Sophia.
Oh, just wanted to add on really quick. For sure, just like elevating what you said about teachers. I've had a lot of teachers in the past who have celebrated who I am and who I choose to be. So also just like to all the teachers watching, for sure, like celebrate how different each kid is and let them know that who they are is totally okay. Don't shut down their interests. Don't tell them that what they love isn't a real thing or it isn't cool. Like let your kid express themselves in the classroom, because for sure that helped me feel more comfortable with myself, with teachers allowing me to be me in the classroom.
Awesome. Thank you for adding that, Sophia. Ryan, let's hear it. So tell us what it takes to be well in this environment. What do you do that helps you?
Well, I mean, I have to, shout out El Centro, of course, my big picture school here in Philly, because when I got there, they taught me and showed me that it's a bigger picture than just the corners that I'm from or the drug dealers that I once idolized. It's much bigger than that, and the world is much bigger than that, right? They took me to my first art gallery show when I entered high school. So, that was amazing for me. But now that I'm an adult, I'm 24 years old, and one of the things that I like to do whenever I'm in a public setting or I'm running a workshop, I go to my council. Right, I got like 5 dudes that I call, and women. I also got a woman in there that I call, and I ask them, like, listen, you were there, so can I get your feedback on what I need to work on, or what I need to change? Because I'm all for feedback, because we all learn from each other. And if I don't take, this is why I have 5 individuals that I interact with, because if I don't, I might not like what you're saying, right? But something's going to stay in my subconscious that later on I'm going to remember, that one part he said, or that one part she told me, I need that right there. That, she was right about that. That's why I contact 5 people and don't talk to just one person. And I ask for all the feedback I can get, because I'm comfortable with myself. I'm comfortable with being able to code switch in the world that I live in, because, I'm from the hood, but I work in the court system. So it ain't, when I go up in that John, you feel me? It ain't that. It's yes, sir, no, sir, right? So that's why I still ask for feedback. And that's why I still ask, like, yo, did North Philly come out of me a little too much in this session? And, but it's so much other things that I talk about when I talk to my 5 folks, right? Shout out to Judan, Viv, wherever he is right now. But that's just one of my mentors. That's like the first dude I call for anything, right? And that was my high school principal. And that's how I go about navigating this adult world. I wish I was a kid again, man. I wish I was a kid again.
Yeah, and speaking of the Philly vernacular, that John was right on spot, Ryan. I feel you. All right, just need to just put a really fine point on, again, I can't wait for y'all to really take a look at some of the conversation in the chat. But you all in different ways highlighted different adults that definitely support you through your journey. And that feels like it's a very important thing. And again, I'm trying to, talking with us, right? Because I can see us, but then also knowing that there are a lot of folks just watching us also simultaneously that are just hearing it. And just the importance of that long-term relationship, authentic relationship, right? Like folks that, we have educators that love their content more than they love working with folks, and those often more than they love young people, and that just can't be right? Like, you got to love young people more than you love your content. We want you to be masters in your content, but if you don't love working with young people more than you love, then this may not be the field for y'all, especially when we talk about working with young people. So I needed to get on my soapbox for 2 seconds. All right. I'm going to turn it over just because we're flowing lovely, and I do want to allow some time for some questions from a number of our attendees. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris Jackson for the first question.
What is up? I would love to very quickly tell a story. My very first experience working for Big Picture, I was with Carlos and we were at a conference in San Diego. A young man named Luis Del Rosario was speaking, and there was a Q&A during that session, and someone from the audience applauded Luis and said that he was well-spoken, he was amazing, but sort of insinuated that we must have invited him here because he was among the most extraordinary Big Picture students. And Luis said, there are no extraordinary students in Big Picture because we are all extraordinary. So I want to thank our panelists today for being boring in your extraordinariness. I really appreciate you all. Nasim, Ryan, I have loved getting to know you over the years. Sophia, you are clearly a rising star in our network, so I look forward to building this relationship with you as well. Man, we are in our fourth of our fifth conversation. Carlos has already shouted out some folks that we've seen over and over again. I applaud you, I thank you. You've also mentioned Brenda Diaz. I wanna sort of queue up a question that she had for our attendees. If you don't mind, Brenda, I'm gonna spin it a little bit because there's something I wanna get at as well. It's really interesting for me all to find out that Ryan and Nasim had not heard of the Central Park Five before. And my first reaction was, shouldn't they have learned that in school? But then it occurred to me that school is everywhere, right? Netflix is school and Ava is our professor, so you have learned that in school. But to what extent do you believe that there are things like this that should be spoken about and taught in school? And what are some of the obstacles that you think are being faced, whether it be parents, boards of directors, that sort of hinder the conversations from taking place? I'll turn it over. Who wants it? Let's go, Nas. Mute.
So this goes back to the answer to my first question. I do feel that this history, like the Central Park Five, should be included into the everyday curriculum. I'm into history. I'm into the things that a lot of people consider boring. And a lot of the things that I wanted to learn about myself and my culture and my experience in the world, I did not learn it inside of the classroom. I had to take it upon myself on my free time and open up a book and learn about it. And it was because there were mentors that had challenged me. Like, for example, one of my mentors had told me that a lot of Puerto Ricans go to the Puerto Rican Day Parade, but if you ask them historical facts about Puerto Rico, they don't know them. And I took that, and it was very true at the time for me. So I bought a bunch of books about Puerto Rico and started reading them. And now I'm well educated in the subject, but before I wasn't. So how do we incorporate? Now I have a question for big picture learning. How do we incorporate these things into schools that students want to learn? I know, there's an open forum between student and teacher for students to push back, but how do we fit everything into a school year? Like, it's hard to do that. So I think we have to take it upon ourselves to figure out how to crack the code, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, to add on to what Nas was saying, for sure, a phrase I believe in every single day is, if we don't know our history, we're bound to repeat it. You gotta know, I feel like kids of color gotta know where they're coming from, and they gotta know their history, because it's gonna be dangerous if kids my age don't know their rights, don't know what could happen to them, and it's dangerous for them. So I praise you, Renee, for making something like this to educate us and to tell us that this is a thing, this could happen again, and this is how you can be ready for it. And you can learn from all the pain these boys had to go through. So I'd say for sure, I encourage teachers to show it to their kids if they have the courage to. I feel like teachers need more courage to show kids that this is what the world is like. And I feel like we're sort of filtering it from them a little bit. And teachers who just teach out of textbooks, I feel like they refuse and they block the real truth, especially from kids of color and other learners like me who want to know, what about me? I don't want to learn about all these white men who look nothing like me. I want to learn more about women of color. Like, teach me more stories, like Rosa Parks, like other women who are strong that I need to learn from. So I feel like teachers who just teach out of the textbook are filtering from us and are keeping it from us. And I feel like if young girls and women don't know their roots, and kids of color, if they don't know their roots and where they're coming from, I feel like educators are holding them back from being their true selves.
Nas?
All right, you could go. I just have one more thing, but
Go ahead. I mean, if you feel like you need to follow that, I think Sophia, that was a mic drop, if I'm not mistaken. So unless you
definitely was a mic drop. I'm not gonna take it away from Sophia. She's amazing. But one thing, when I got to GW, I was excited to take my Intro to Political Science course. And when I looked at my syllabus, the Civil Rights Movement was one chapter and one lecture. How can you put the Civil Rights Movement into one chapter? It's impossible. And into one lecture, that's like impossible. You're not doing the Civil Rights Movement any justice. And Sophia, let's drop the mic together. I'm gonna leave it at that.
Perfect. One of the things that I always say that it's just so important that when you know your history, you know your power. So I'm just appreciative of the three of you, just kind of knowing your history, knowing your worth, and then directly connected to that, knowing your power. So Sophia, Nas, Ryan, thank you all for those gems. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your brilliance, and thank you for pushing and challenging us the way we need to be pushed and challenged. Appreciate y'all. And to all the folks that took time out on this Sunday evening to join us for this conversation. Once again, a lot of you have been here week in and week out. Really appreciate it. Please know that we do not take this lightly in any way. Appreciate y'all leaning into this conversation. So what we know, y'all, is that even though it happened then in 1989, but we still see Kevin, Raymond, Antron, Youssef, and Corey in our classrooms today. Like every day, their education and their lives depend on us throwing out the same old raggedy manual that many schools and systems have been using forever. We can and we absolutely need to do better by them. So I know for some of us, we've already started our school year, and some of us are preparing to begin our school year in the coming weeks. Just let's continue to challenge ourselves and our often well-intended but not intentional enough colleagues whose sometimes micro and macro aggressions communicate a very clear label to our young people. And that label is a brand that sadly too few students can remove without the help of some fierce advocates. Now, I know, because I know that a lot of folks that are in this chat and on the Zoom, that many of us that have been sitting through these conversations week in and week out aren't just some of those advocates, you're also equity allies and social justice accomplices. So the big picture ask of all of us, to the education family that's here and that's listening, and anyone that touches the lives on a regular basis of young people, which is usually all of us, beginning with tomorrow, right? With this 2019-20 school year, let's continue to speak out on behalf and create spaces for the voices of those that are most vulnerable and impressionable, right? Those that we care for, those that we serve, and those that we love, our young people, our youth. All right, it's been 4 weeks. We have one session left, y'all, and wanna highlight that the next and last session will be at on a new day and time. It's gonna be this upcoming Wednesday, August 14th at 9 p.m. Eastern. And we'll be concluding this series with a conversation that currently includes Michael Lipset from the High School for Recording Arts in St. Paul, Minnesota, and Tracy Davis, the immediate past superintendent of Washoe County School District in Reno, Nevada. Now, I said that these are our current panelists, as we still have space for some more folks. So for those of you that have been faithful attendees of these conversations, we really need and welcome your voices. So if you'd like to be down in that next conversation on Wednesday the 14th, just shoot me an email, carlos@bigpicturelearning.org, if you're interested in being part of that conversation. Also, a reminder for everyone else, please remember to register for that session in advance. And to do so, just go down to bigpicture.org, go to our blog session for more information. And please start, for this last conversation, let's share that with other folks that you feel would benefit from attending and listening that perhaps haven't been able to make one of the first four. All right. So on behalf of all of us at Big Picture, wishing you all a great night and a great week. Peace.